All right. All right. Let's see if we're live over here for a second. Making sure we're up and running on YouTube. Yes, we are. Yes, we are. All right. What's good, Knicks Nation? Welcome back for another Game of the Week preview. We are previewing the New York Knicks facing the LA Clippers on Monday night at Madison Square Garden. It'll be at 7:30. You can go catch it on MSG. And to help us break down this game, we got none other than the Athletics' very own Wall Murray. He covers the Los Angeles Clippers in detail. He's a phenomenal writer, phenomenal beat reporter. And of course, that's the only way we do it around here. We just bring on great guests after great guests after great guests. So it only makes sense that we get Wall to give us the inside out about the LA Clippers and their new acquisition, James Harden. But before we get into all of that, make sure to hit that thumbs up button for your boys. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. Make sure to check out KnicksFanTV.com and make sure to support our sponsors, Underdog Fantasy. Okay, let's get into this. Wall, my man, how you doing today?
I'm good now, man. It took me a little while to get caught up on sleep, and then we had some news that I'm sure we'll probably get into on this. But it's great to be in New York. I'm from Philly, so I love any chance I can get to the East Coast. It's one of my favorite cities. I can't say the world because I haven't traveled that much, but I love New York, and so I'm really happy to be here.
Wow, just throwing Philly under the bus like that? You're just gonna say New York's a better city, and you're from Philly? I don't know how
I didn't say all that, but I love being here. You know what I'm saying?
Oh man, well, I'm glad that you appreciate the city that I grew up in and that I'm from. So that means a lot to me. And like you, like I moved to a different city, so I actually live in Boston right now. So it's all good, man. It's all good. We all got to move and keep the thing chugging along. But
Yep.
yeah, you're doing well. Glad to have you here. Look, man, let's just rip the Band-Aid off and get right into this. There was a trade that happened for the Los Angeles Clippers and the city that you're from, the Philadelphia 76ers. There's one James Harden that went over to LA. So break down the trade for us, man. What are your thoughts on James Harden going to the Clippers?
They are, for a player that is so polarizing, that is so all-encompassing, especially on the offensive end, is James Harden. I don't have like the deepest thoughts about, this is going to work for sure. This is definitely not going to work. I've been very neutral about everything leading up to it, whether the questions of should they not, as far as respecting the guys that they already had on the roster. And I knew that if they did make it, I was going to be pretty neutral on, okay, do I think that this is going to be a move that is going to be significantly positive, negative? I'm not on either end right now, but I am glad that the Clippers finally did what they needed to do. I do think that the trade that they made was arguably one of the very best ones, given what they had on the roster and what they needed to do to change the roster for the better. They needed to consolidate the power forward position in January. Okay, so this is a move that Harden is the name that made it available to them to do what they need to do to consolidate the roster, but the means of the pieces outgoing to reshape how the team was lining up, I said that this is something that they needed to consider back in January. As far as Harden's part in it, when he opted in, I was on the reporting that Harden was interested in the Clippers and really no one else. He really wanted to be with this group, with this coach, with this franchise, with this opportunity to win a championship. And I'm like, all right, cool. How are you going to get him? Well, now that they have him, I really think that the fit has to consider the fact that these guys do have a lot of respect for each other, that the head coach is really good at managing star talent. And so that is probably going to be the best part about this move for the Clippers. And the things that you have to figure out is where everybody else falls in. How do you divide the ball handling? How do you defend with those guys on the floor? What happens when someone's unavailable now that you have four guys who have missed, well, maybe not Russell Westbrook as much, but four guys who, you have to consider what will happen if they miss time. And so those are things that we're going to learn over the next 3 months. we have another trade deadline coming. But this deadline to get James now, I'm really just glad that the team did what they had to do.
And just so that everyone knows what the trade consists of, the 76ers sent James Harden, PJ Tucker, Philippe Pet Rusev to the Clippers, and the Clippers sent Marcus Morris, Robert Covington, Nicholas Batum, KJ Martin, 2028 unprotected first round pick, 2 second-round picks, a 29 pick swap, and an additional first round pick from the Oklahoma City Thunder, which will be, I guess, the lesser of, I forget which picks they are, but I was like, what, I think it's them, the Nuggets, and I forget what other team that was involved in for that first rounder, but essentially it's going to be the worst of the draft picks. And well, I have to ask, because why you mentioned that Harden wanted to go to the Clippers and nowhere else. Why the Clippers? Is it just because of all the star talent? Is it because James Harden's been from the area? Like, why did he want to go to the Clippers and nowhere else?
I think the biggest thing is he was able to have a relationship with so many of the guys on the team, and he's from LA. I think that's the biggest thing about it. Like, the Clippers, by the time late June rolled around, everyone knew that they were in the market for a big guard. They were in the market for trying to win a championship with not as many means to do so. Like, the Clippers before this trade, they didn't make any moves, really. The only move to acquire a veteran on a standard contract was to get KJ Martin for a couple seconds. Like, that was it. And KJ actually wound up being a part of this trade, right? So they drafted Kobe Brown with their first round pick. They would have used that first round pick in a deal to get Malcolm Brogdon from the Boston Celtics, in a deal that would have sent Marcus Morris Sr. and Amir Coffey over to Washington. That was a potential three-way trade. And that trade fell through because the Clippers wanted more information from the Boston Celtics about Brogdon, and the Celtics did not feel like they wanted to spend the extra time to do that. And so they booted the Clippers out of the deal and wound up making a new deal with Washington involving Memphis so that they could send Marcus Smart to Memphis and get Porzingis that way. So there was a lot of that, just those moves to consider. And all in all, I think it was just a matter of James studied the fit, and he didn't have a whole lot of places to go. And that's a place that he identified that he wanted to go to.
Okay. And do you think the Clippers needed James Harden? I mean, they started off the season pretty strong. So to me, I was like, they kind of could have been fine without having to do the Harden trade.
I feel like that's a similar conversation to, did the Clippers need to make the Paul George, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander trade? And and for me, it's like, yes, they needed to make that trade because it ensured they would get Kawhi Leonard, and that is the deal that you make in order to secure that. It's the same thing here. Like, the Clippers probably could have been regular season fine with the guys that were on the roster already, but in order to raise the ceiling, which is all Lawrence Frank talked about, Lawrence wasn't talking about the floor. Okay. If anything, the floor is a guy like Terrence Mann. Terrence Mann is a floor raiser because you don't want to trade a guy like him. He can fill in once he gets healthy, of course, but he can fill in and play a number of positions, fill a number of different roles. But you wouldn't call Terrence a ceiling raiser. You would call James a ceiling raiser, because even last year in his 14th NBA season, not an all-star campaign because the coaches would have had to vote Harden in, and the coaches went with other players. That's, their prerogative. But James Harden still led the league in assists while averaging 20 plus points a game. Not a lot of dudes have done that. And James is still the kind of player who, at his best, we saw it in the same playoffs that we criticized him for. Without James Harden, the Sixers don't take a 3-2 lead. I mean, yes, they did lose it, and part of the reason they lost is why people will criticize James. But part of the reason why you're the Clippers and you say this will work for us and maybe not so much for Philly or for Brooklyn is, one, you want to keep him healthy. I think keeping his workload down, James being in much better shape now than he was when he arrived in Brooklyn back in January of 2021. I think that's going to help James be healthier. And that was the thing. Brooklyn didn't work out because his one postseason in Brooklyn, he was dragging his leg around because of the hamstring strain. I think that is a big part of the story there. Why did he want out of Brooklyn? Because he was doing well with that team while Kevin Durant was healthy, but then Kevin gets hurt, and the Nets decided to go back on their word about keeping Kyrie Irving away from the team while Kyrie refused to do what the rest of the team did, which was vaccinate himself and have himself be available like the rest of the team. James didn't like that, and James suggested that Brooklyn wasn't being serious. And you know what? How wrong was James, considering Brooklyn hasn't won a playoff game since? And so the issue in Philadelphia really came down to fit. Like there's communication with the front office that happened to a degree. James took less money, helped get his guys in Philly to help improve the Sixers' chances of competing. And then when Game 7 happened and the Celtics eliminate them, James pretty much was kept in the dark. And you know what? James isn't completely blameless in this. Like, James was the one who probably would have wanted to go to Houston, get his bag, going back to a full role. And that door closed when Ime Udoka was hired as the coach of the Houston Rockets. So there's a confluence of all kinds of things. Again, people are going to criticize James, but I think this winds up working better simply for the fact that James won't be asked to do as much for this Clippers team as he was to do for the previous teams that he's been on.
And once again, we're talking to Law Murray. He is the Clippers beat reporter for The Athletic. Well, with Harden now being on the team, the projected lineup is going to be Russell Westbrook, James Harden, Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, and then Zubac, right? That's good. That's got to be the starting five.
That's news that it's funny, like we broke it today. And shout out to my guy Shams, because we broke that together. But if people were reading me before this morning, that's all I put in my stories. I literally put a depth chart on Halloween saying what it was going to be. So it's funny how, like, it takes it took a couple extra calls for me to be like, all right, here it is. But yes, that's the lineup that we're going to see Monday night in New York.
Okay. Against our Knicks. This is going to be that James Harden's debut is against our Knicks. It feels like everybody, when it comes to a new trade, when someone wants to go off, it's always got to be a Madison Square Garden. I get it. Everyone wants to do it on Broadway.
I was told it's the world's most famous arena. So
it is the world's most famous arena. Don't forget that. But so with Harden being in the starting rotation now, like, how does that impact Russell Westbrook and everybody else in that roster? Because Russ is a point guard. Harden has, transitioned from being the scoring guard to being a point guard in Houston. He was effectively the point guard in Philly as well. And then you talk about his usage everywhere he's been. It's such high usage. So how does that also impact Kawhi and PG? So what do you make of this lineup right now?
Sacrifice. I've heard it so much this week, and it's going to have to be what it takes for these guys at this stage of their career to get to the ultimate goal. These guys have enough individual accolades, and they have great statistical outputs that, we can call them for future Hall of Famers. But if those dudes want another chip, and even Kawhi should want another chip, he won his first in 2014. He won a second in 2019. 5 years later, will he get that other one in his hometown? Like, winning it with the Spurs is one thing. Like, you were drafted there. He was basically a role player, even though he was the finals MVP. Going there in Toronto was cool because he was a mercenary, basically.
Yeah, essentially.
Best contract year since Deion Sanders with the San Francisco 49ers. But like, to win it as the true face of a franchise, to grind it out, to do it post ACL, yes, that would be meaningful to him. And he's the one who's won the damn thing as far as the stars go. So on the court, T. Lue said Russell is going to be the point guard while those guys start together, and James is going to be off the ball. And we know Kawhi and Paul, they've basically been begging to have someone else run the point guard duties for them ever since they joined the Clippers. So we know that offensively, the only real question to see how this would go is with James, and James is the new guy. He wanted to be in this situation. They had to have talked about this.
Mm-hmm.
That is not. This isn't going to be one of those situations where, oh wow, we're surprised that James. No, James wanted this, so this is what it's going to be. And then on the other end of the floor, which is where I'm most interested, because I don't care about this team's offense. They have scores. I don't care if 3 of those guys aren't playing. As long as one of them are playing, it will be remarkably effective, because I've literally seen this team play with Ivica Zubac starting with Reggie Jackson, Marcus Morris, Amir Coffey, and Nicholas Batum. No disrespect to those guys. That team earned a winning record, should have been in the playoffs, but they didn't make the play-in tournament work out for them. But Tyrone Lue used to say that whole year, we got guys who can eat but can't cook. Well, now you got 4 cooks. And so the offense will take care of itself one way or the other. The defense is where that's what it's going to be, the true sacrifice. They're not the biggest team, but all those guys are good at the art of getting to the ball, having a nose for the ball, both in terms of steals and rebounds. They need to be physical. They need to do the little things, the attention to detail, axe out, rotate, help, communicate. They need to do all those things consistently for that to work. If they can do that, then hey, we might be talking about a team that might make a deep run in the spring. But they have a few months to work that out, and you have to look at both. Everyone's going to talk about the offense. It's the defense. Can that team defend at a high level? Because a lot of teams can score in the NBA. The difference between winning and losing is being able to get the stops, both situationally and consistently over the course of the game.
Well, I got to pivot here and ask you about a guy that you had a great article about, which is our guy, Russell Westbrook. And, talk about his time over in LA and how it's now better being on the Clippers, and how PG and Kawhi were, and more so PG, they were at the forefront standing up for Russ and saying that it just didn't work out because it wasn't a good fit for him in LA, and he wasn't properly utilized. And now he gets to do that here. He gets to do that there on the Clippers. What have you seen as the biggest difference from LA? I should say not LA, from the Lakers to the Clippers for Russ?
Coaching. Coaching and star support, consistent star support. I just feel like when Russ came to the Lakers, you could see right away that the front office probably had another move that was more ideal for that roster. Getting Buddy Hield from Sacramento probably would have optimized LeBron James and Anthony Davis more. But the front office listened to their stars, and they put their head coach, Frank Vogel, in a very tough spot. Frank Vogel likes to coach big, and he likes to have enough offense but lead with his defense. And in making the move for Russ, it really crippled the Lakers roster. It really still empowered Russell Westbrook to where Frank Vogel really wasn't able to reach him. And it made the Lakers smaller. The Lakers thought that they could commit to small ball. Like, that team was going to start Trevor Ariza of all, for crying out loud, with that group. Trevor wasn't healthy, and by the time he was healthy, he showed that he was on his very last legs as an NBA player. It was a failure. By that trade deadline, LeBron, who we know how LeBron works as far as maneuvering to get the players that he wants and get the front office. Ironically, that's how Russell Westbrook got there in the first place. LeBron was out on Russ. And the thing is, Russ was playing every game. He was in the lineup. LeBron missed more than 25 games. Anthony Davis missed like half the year, I believe. That was the first year it cost Frank Vogel's job, even though he won a championship with that team. By the time the offseason comes, everybody knows Russ is on the outs with that team, but Russ isn't going to give up $47 million. No one in the NBA is like, yeah, let me just give away the money that I'm making just to get out. And he's from there. Like, that hit a little bit deeper, So he picks up his option, even though LeBron and him aren't talking, even though LeBron is subliminally messaging how his agent situation is going, like stuff that guys normally don't do when their teammates normally don't do across the league, whether your teammates or not. They hired Darvin Ham, and Darvin tried, but Darvin was put in a position where that Lakers front office just added a bunch of small guards to the team. Like they added Patrick Beverly to a team that already had Russ, that already had Kendrick Nunn, right? Like had all these guys that needed to play. They added Lonnie Walker, who's not as small as those guys, but it's the same idea. Like you're incredibly guard heavy. You're rolling out 3 and 4 guard lineups. Russ is frustrated. He's not starting anymore. Like forget whether it was supposed to work or not. Like it was set up for failure. And so he's with a better roster. He's with better stars as far as optimal fit. You know, LeBron is an on-ball guy, one of the best. I mean, he's literally the NBA's all-time leading scorer. So that's a different consideration. You got Anthony Davis, who is a big. He's not really a floor spacer. He's the guy who needs his touches on the interior, and so that's different than Kawhi and Paul. Kawhi and Paul came into this league as guys who needed to learn how to be great shooters, be great off the ball, be great defenders for teams that were good when they got there. Maybe not Paul as much, but Paul George was in the playoffs as a rookie and basically has been in the playoffs every single year except the year that they lost in the play-in tournament. I think that's a different dynamic for a guy like Russell Westbrook because you got guys who want you to be the point guard instead of guys who have to dominate or have to touch the ball. So that's what has worked out differently for Russell Westbrook with the Clippers versus his time with the Lakers.
What do you make of Westbrook not dapping up Braun before the game?
It's nothing. Like I think here's what happens. That's national TV rivalry game. Everyone's like, oh, I got to see Russ because everyone's hustling for content. You know how it is. And like, I really hope none of that stuff came from people who actually have been watching Russell Westbrook with the Clippers. Russell does the same thing before. He's one of the most OCD players in the league. He has his routines. Russ doesn't stray from what he does. What people do is they're like, oh, let's pay attention to Russ and see if like Russell Westbrook is always away from the opening tip to begin a game. That's always how it's been. So I think the only thing that changed was people's viewing habits. Nothing changed with Russ and his routine. And like, I don't know. It's so weird, man.
Let's talk about the next important guy on this entire team, which is Ty Lue, man. What have you made about Ty Lue as a head coach? Because he coached LeBron out in Cleveland, had to go be an assistant after losing the job out in Cleveland, becomes the head coach out for the Clippers. And I think he's like one of the best coaches out there, man. I think from an X's and O standpoint, being able to control egos, I think he's like up there with them, up there with all the top coaches. What have you made about Ty Lue throughout his entire tenure as a head coach for the Clippers?
It's been a privilege. When I got the job at the Athletic, he was about to start his first season, and he had already been an assistant with the Clippers twice, including the year in the bubble. The other year was his first year with Doc Rivers with the Clippers back in 2013-14. So you're talking about a guy who the front office knows really well, the ownership knew really well. The players, they already knew what he was like because he was around them. And he has a connection to the market even beyond the Clippers because he's a championship contributor with the Los Angeles Lakers, two rings playing with the Kobe and Shaq team. So he already had that. And people love to discredit T. Lue because of his accomplishments. Again, weird shit, man. Like people love to be like, you accomplished something, but let me tell you why I should invalidate it, And Tyrone Lue has just done nothing but show why he's a legitimately great coach. It's more than just your X's and O's. He's really good at that. He knows what he wants to do. But the key to good coaching is not just what you do, but how you do it with the players that you have. To be able to communicate effectively from the best guy on the team to the guy who is really on a 10-day contract. And we saw all those versions of T. Lue when Tyrone Lue didn't have Kawhi for the entire season because of ACL recovery, and Paul George tears a ligament in his elbow. The fact that he was able to still get that team over 500 to end the regular season, that's when people really started to recognize how good of a coach he was for that team and that franchise. I mean, it should have already been the case. Dude won a championship. Dude continuously got that team to the finals, even when other teams got better in the conference, even with, the whole league chasing the Kevin Durant Warriors. And so I did think that he slipped last year, and didn't have his best year last year, for a number of reasons. Some of them are understandable, but I was even like, see, you got to be better this year as far as, the mentor that you have reaching the role players. That I think is going to test Tyrone Lue more than how he reaches Kawhi, Paul, Russell Westbrook, James Harden. I think T. Lue does a great job empowering stars and putting players at a star level in position to succeed. How he manages the rotation, how he gets guys who might not feel as secure with their roles on their team going forward, that's going to be the true test of T. Lue. But everyone in the league knows that he's more than capable. And I think that you make a move like this to get a James Harden on your team with the consideration of who your head coach is.
All right. And once again, we were talking to Wall Murray. He is the Clippers beat reporter for The Athletic. And we're going to take a little second right here for everyone just to promote our sponsor of the show, Underdog Fantasy. Knicks Nation, everyone out there tuning in. Look, we all know we like to have a little fun while watching these games. So make sure to download the app, Underdog Fantasy. You can make sure to when you're using the app, you get to choose between players either going higher or lower of what their projections are, whether it be scoring, rebounding, touchdown, so forth. Is for all sports. Anything that you're interested in, baseball's over, but basketball, NFL right now, you can go choose. So say if you want to go see if Kristaps Porzingis, you can choose if he wants to go choose higher or lower of points he's going to make. Maybe you want to go put some money down on RJ Barrett tomorrow because he's gonna be back. Maybe we're gonna see that matchup between him and Paul George. Will RJ be able to go over 17 points or something of that nature? You can choose higher or lower than that. And the cool thing about Underdog is that you can choose interesting, or like not even necessarily interesting, but different categories that are not usually on other platforms. For example, field goal attempts. That's not something that you usually get on other platforms. So make sure to download Underdog Fantasy. You can use the promo code KFTV to get up to a $500 match. Once again, make sure to use the promo code KFTV. All right, back to the conversation with Wall. Wall, let's break this game down, man. And I'm looking at this is my key matchup for the game. RJ Barrett versus Paul George. These are the two guys I'm looking at because one, we need some offense. RJ has been, outside of Brunson, well, not to start the season, I should say. RJ's been the most consistent guy for the Knicks so far to start this season. Paul George having a great start to his year. And I'm looking at these two players because I think Paul George, we know when he's on, one of the best two-way players out there, can score the ball, lights out, can also lock up anybody. Great to cover positions 1 through 3, sometimes 4, depending on who it is. RJ, I like what he's shown this year. He's gotten more mature in making his reads. He's gotten more mature in the sense that when he's attacking the rim, he's not trying to just bulldoze his way into 3 defenders. He's actually choosing the right matchups and when he should go to attack. And right now, he's also shooting the 3 ball pretty well. Last time I checked, he's shooting close to 40%. So that's something that's been very impressive. I'd like to see him maintain that. Obviously, it's still early in the season. He's missed the last 2 games, but he's supposed to be back tomorrow against the Clippers, and we surely need him because the last 2 games, Brunson has struggled. It seems like he's back in rhythm against the Bucks. Granted, the Bucks have like one of the worst defenses, but we're still waiting on Julius Randle to find his rhythm too. And so when watching these past few games, we see that we need more of an offensive scoring threat. Sure, IQ off the bench could be great. Grimes showed up last night. You don't know what you're going to necessarily get from Dante DiVincenzo, but RJ has been that consistent guy, and I'm looking to see if he's able to continue that against Paul George because Paul George is a tough matchup for any wing based on who Paul George is. That's my key matchup of the week. Let me know your thoughts about that key matchup and if you have a different matchup that you're looking at.
Yeah, well, I got to give RJ credit because I'm not super high on RJ. Like I compared him and his game to Keldon Johnson last year and came away like thinking Keldon is probably the the more effective player, even though RJ is the more heralded player. RJ has stepped up. Obviously, it's not great that he's already dealing with knee issues. Playing for a Tom Thibodeau team, I'm
Oh my
always like,
God.
I'm not going to get comfortable with guys getting nicked up early in the season like that. But it's great that it's whatever he's dealing with that caused him to miss the Milwaukee game. He's over it for the most part. So obviously a situation to monitor long term, but in short term, he's playing. He's getting to the line more. That 3-pointer being up over 40%. I don't care if it's 3 games. Dude was struggling to be over 30% last year. And that's my biggest issue with RJ is, he's a basically very left-handed player, kind of like Jaylen Brown's right hand. I'm sure you've heard a lot of that being in Boston, but like RJ against the Clippers has had some effective games because when the Clippers don't remember he's left-handed, he can really hurt you as a downhill player. Now, last year, I remember the Clippers were in Madison Square Garden and RJ struggled mightily. And RJ will be facing that version of the team, not the version of the team that, doesn't know their personnel. So it's going to be interesting to see how RJ adjusts to, size. I feel like RJ can bully guys, but RJ is not the most explosive. And the Clippers don't just have they can have multiple guys on someone like RJ. Where that's supposed to benefit the Knicks is that the Knicks are huge. They're big at small forward and RJ. They are big at power forward with Julius Randle. They're big at center with Mitchell Robinson. Even at point guard, Jalen Brunson, shooting guard, Quentin Grimes. Across the board, their starters are big. The issue is I'm not sure how good the starters fit together because that offense has been really bad. And it's not for a lack of the things that they did well last year. They hit the offensive glass extremely hard. That's an issue that you're going to have to see right away if the Clippers having PG and Kawhi at the 3-4 instead of the 2-3. You're going to see if that makes a difference because you got to hit the Knicks. The Knicks, they beat you because they're going to be physical. They're going to hit you at all 5 positions. But where the Knicks struggle is they don't move the ball, and those guys shoot horrible. Like, it's one of the worst shooting teams in the NBA.
Yeah.
That was the case last year. They were a great offense last year because they were so good in the possession battle. But being good in the possession battle meant when they miss, they get offensive rebounds. They don't pass, but they don't turn the ball over. So it worked out. And they get to the line at a high rate because of that physicality. I don't see the same Knicks team as far as, being able to protect the basketball at a high level and being able to at least get some kind of offense going. They're getting to the line, but the shooting is really crippling them inside and outside the arc. So that's the thing Tyrone Lue has kind of pointed out. He wants to see if this is the game where Julius Randle gets it together. Even year Julius Randle is it's Jekyll and Hyde with that dude. and
It is. And,
yeah,
with Julius Randle, he's the biggest reason why the Knicks shooting is so poor right now. Like, sure, the role players aren't necessarily all hitting their shots, but Randle,
27% is crazy.
it is. But 20% is that, and that's the thing. That's what's cratering the Knicks shooting is that Julius Randle, like, and I understand that he's coming back from ankle surgery. He got injured prior to the playoffs, and then he gets re-injured during the playoffs against the Cavs. And my thing is that with Randle, like, he's a tough shot maker. Most of the shots that he's taking is like him fading away from wherever on the court with around 15 feet or shorter from the rim. And because his shot's not falling right now, and those are the shots that he predominantly loves to take, it's going to look 10 times worse because instead of just necessarily moving off ball and looking for a cut, it's let me go take this 15 step back jumper, which it's like, all right, well, you're not hitting it right now, and you're really hurting the team with that possession. Whereas even against Milwaukee, he started to attack the rim. And when he started to use his physicality and get to the line, it's like, that's what we need to see from you right now since your jumper's not falling. But then the other issue is that his free throw shooting wasn't great either. So if he can just tidy up the free throw shooting and get downhill for the interim until he finds that jumper, it would help the Knicks' efficiency in sense of shooting right now. But if he's just going to take shots like that, and we can also say Jalen Brunson, like, to start the season, like, he wasn't shooting great either. Like, he was getting to his spots, but his shots weren't falling. And so, like, when you see it against the Bucks, you're like, oh, that's the guy that we know against. And to be fair to him, like, the biggest issue is that if no one else is going to shoot, and then you're going to rely on Brunson, if he's got to go against teams like Boston or the Pelicans that have height and wingspan, it's going to be difficult for him to, just to compete at that level if no one else is shooting. Because last year, Randle was that guy in the first quarter, right? Like he was second in the league in most first quarter points scored, right behind Luka Doncic, averaged 9.1 points. But that's not what he's doing right now. He's not that guy who's setting the tone, which is, all right, once he sets the tone, it's like we got to focus on Randle, double team him, make sure they's on a groove anymore. When we start focusing on Randle, then everything kind of falls into place, especially with JB. But that hasn't been the case this year. So that's just kind of where the Knicks are at shooting wise. But since we're talking about Randle, what have your overall thoughts have been about Randle? Not necessarily this season, but his entire tenure on the Knicks.
Yeah, I mean, like I was saying earlier, it's Jekyll and Hyde. Like he has a rough year, he bounces back. He was the MIP in 2021. Then he had a rough year, and then last year he bounced back, and now he's having another rough year. I think the most eye-opening thing is that the Knicks shooting is shooting. That's like hitting in baseball, a sport I don't play. But like those like things can come and go, but the things that are supposed to be consistent, Julius has missed 15 out of 18 shots in the restricted area this year. And I really wonder, I made the joke about Tibbs earlier as far as RJ. I'm not joking about Julius. That dude is an old 28, about to turn 29, I think, this month. And I do wonder where the cliff is. Julius has been through a lot physically. Okay. He's already a big dude. His first year in the NBA as a rookie, he got hurt in his very first game with the Lakers, missed almost his entire rookie season with a leg injury. He's had these injuries before. So the durability was nice, but it's, when a guy has surgery and is trying to come back, and you can see tangible evidence that there is a struggle there, that's frustrating. We all know that. I think the best thing about Jalen Brunson is that dude is really good. He takes pressure off of Julius in more ways than one. Because when Julius plays well, Julius is pretty good to be around. When Julius does not play well, and I saw this when the Knicks visited LA this past March, and Marcus Morris Sr. was the one beating up on Julius defensively. People don't like Marcus around here, but I saw
I would
what
love to have
Marcus' value
I would
was.
like to have Marcus Morris back on the team, actually. As
Hit
a
up the
backup
Sixers
four.
about that.
Yeah, I know.
Hit up the
That's gonna
Sixers
be
about
tough.
that. But Marcus frustrated Julius. Julius was super inefficient, and his demeanor was even worse. And so that's the thing with Julius. Like, he's in the biggest media market in the country, and yeah, when he plays well, it's cool. But when he's struggling like this, he's not exactly a guy who mentally you feel like is going to just snap out of it. And so this is a slump that's draining for not just him, but it threatens to be draining for the entire team. There's a reason the Knicks have the record they do, and that is the biggest concern. I think that, congratulations to Julius for the year that he had last year, but he has never shown that he is capable of doing it back-to-back years. He's never really shown that as the number one guy that he can really shoulder that load of the attention that comes not just off the court with the media or whatever else goes on with the Knicks, but like just simply like you're at the top of the scouting report. You're about to get people's head games along with whatever schemes that they have to stop you. And that's a lot when you're 100%. And he's clearly not.
So let's now pivot from Julius Randle to the team battle, right? As a overall, there's other matches, but I want to ask you these two questions because I think they're big in how the Knicks are going to play and how the Knicks and the Clippers are going to face off. So the Clippers, what do you think of the Clippers perimeter defense right now, and how do you think that will change with James Harden?
I think the perimeter defense is going to be a big test for these guys. I'm not as concerned about, how they deal with bigger bodies because these are all older vets. They've been working on their bodies for years. I think when you have young guys in the league, even the big young guys, I think you're always concerned about their level of communication, their level of physicality, their level of maximizing what they have physically. As you get older, I feel like that part of your game gets better, especially for the great players, because they've gotten their ass kicked before, so they know how to react and adjust accordingly. But as you get older, your athleticism slips, your just your consistency to be a stopper that wanes off. You lose track of things off the ball, and I think that's got to be a big concern, not just with James, but with Russ. I think Russell Westbrook's off-ball defense in the Lakers game Wednesday night was substandard. He got beat on a sideline out of bounds, simple backdoor, where all he had to do is keep contact with D'Angelo Russell, and there's no play there. And so those things can get fixed in film, but if those things are recurring, I think you're concerned. And so when it comes to length, when it comes to the ability to be physical on the perimeter, which is the biggest indicator of whether teams shoot the ball well or not, I think those things are going to be fine for the Clippers. I think those guys are going to be motivated. I think PG and Kawhi in particular are going to be better defenders because they have guys like Russell Westbrook and James Harden to shoulder a lot of the ball handling and playmaking load on that end of the floor. That is something that I don't think people are considering as much either. Paul and Kawhi are going to be maximized as defenders because of the addition of James Harden. But this team is going to be judged on whether or not they can lock in on that end of the floor, James especially. And so you just got to see it.
Yeah, the reason I asked is because the Knicks like to get downhill so frequently, right? And like for right now, the Clippers, I think, are ranked 19th according to Clean the Glass, that allow opponents to have a lot of success at the rim. I think it's right here. It's opponents are finishing 68.3% around the rim. So the Knicks like to get downhill. So that's why I'm asking, like, with the addition of James Harden and Russell Westbrook, how's that going to match up against somebody like Jalen Brunson? Even if it's even same thing with RJ against Paul George, like those are two guys that like to get down the hill, and it starts on the perimeter first before it gets down to the paint. My next thing for you though is, what do you think is the Clippers' biggest strength this season, and what does Harden bring to the Clippers that they didn't have?
Their biggest strength is their shooting, and I was concerned about their shooting. I mean, this is a team that a year ago had Luke Kennard, traded him for Eric Gordon. They let Eric Gordon go because of a guarantee in his deal. And I mean, yeah, the Phoenix Suns have Eric Gordon now, but for the minimum, I think Eric Gordon for the minimum is much more valuable than Eric Gordon for about 20 million. And so you have a situation where, that team doesn't have the same kind of shooters. But if you're asking Paul George and Kawhi Leonard to be spot up threats more often, you're seeing they have been really good in that regard. So that is something where I think you're going to see even more of when James Harden comes to the team. James Harden is a phenomenal passer. Like, dude led the league in assists, not just because of who he was passing to, but because James sees passes and is able to fit passes that only a select number of players in the league can do. And so a strength became stronger. Their perimeter offense, having guys who can shoot, having guys who can get downhill, having guys who can generate fouls. I mean, James Harden is one of the darkest artists in the entire history of the league when it comes to free throws, right? Like, the Clippers had a guy like that, Norman Powell, but now that you have James, you can't be too physical with James Harden. First of all, he's already bigger than you more often than not. And second of all, if your hands are in the wrong place, he got you. James is one of those guys. He studies the game. He studies the rules. He studies how he is being defended. And one of the reasons why his performance does decline over the course of in terms of the postseason is because in the postseason, guys are allowed to be more physical. The referees, they don't have somewhere to go as much. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Like, you get the best referees, you get the best defenses, you get players locked in on a playoff series instead of, guys that are just showing up in a town in the middle of December and they got to be to the next city the next night. And they're just trying to get through a night. You know what I mean? They might not play defense until, oh, shoot, it's middle of the fourth quarter. We might have a chance to win. Let's lock in.
Those are
All
very
those
good points.
things matter, right? So, like, over and that's the big thing. The Clippers got James for the regular season so that they can manage all those guys so that they're not playing them 35, 40 minutes a game just so that they can say that they beat the Detroit Pistons. You know,
Yeah,
like you're
absolutely.
trying to get through the regular season, get a respectable seed, and then in the playoffs be able to turn it up a notch. And James, I mean, he said it Thursday. He's not a system player. He's a system.
Yeah.
I mean, so now you got a guy who, because he's that good on the ball, you're better. But because James is playing with these other guys, the team should be able to be better. And James should not have to be that ecosystem of an offense in order for the team to be one of the best perimeter offenses and to maintain the status of being one of the best perimeter offenses in the NBA.
Let's run through some of these other key matchups here, or not key matchups, but other matchups, I should say, that I think are interesting to me, and I want to get your thoughts on them. Right now, I have Brunson versus Harden. I think that makes the most sense just because both are physical. And then for Brunson, like defensively, he doesn't have to keep up with Westbrook and his speed. I think that's going to be more of a Grimes duty. Grimes is going to have to probably be defending Westbrook. I don't know if the Clippers want to switch that defensively, maybe have like Westbrook on Brunson to to make sure to try to slow him down and have Harden on Grimes, just because Grimes isn't really utilized in the offense like that. I'm looking at Randle versus Kawhi just to see. I mean, Kawhi, like we already know what Kawhi is like defensively. That's just insane. I just for a guy who needs to have a bounce back game to get into rhythm. I'm like Randle going against Kawhi Leonard is not the recipe for success, and I just hope that we can get just an average, like solid, better game from Randle that we've been seeing over the last few games. So between those matchups, like anything that sticks out to you, do you think those are the matchups? What are your thoughts?
I'm I'm interested to see who James actually guards. And I honestly would put James on Julius
Really?
because yeah, I'd put James on Julius because I think you want someone who will be physical. I think you want someone who honestly encourage the Knicks to keep going to him. You know, like Julius is the one struggling,
And so where do
and
you put Kawhi then?
you'd put Kawhi on RJ, and you'd put PG on size. Like I think you actually not size. You'd put PG is the size that you put on someone like Jalen. Like
Wow.
I think Jalen doesn't pass the ball, and that team doesn't move the ball. So, um, and that's not disrespect to Jalen. That's the offense that they run. Like you can see the Knicks are not one of the teams in the league that's known for heavy ball movement.
Since Tom Thibodeau's been here, it's never been that.
Exactly. So like I think you have when you go up against the Knicks, they're trying, but like that's just not how they play, especially with that starting group. And so um put make if Jalen Brunson wants to, get 2 feet in the if he gets 2 feet in the paint, that's already a bad thing. But like what Jalen's trying to do. Like Jalen is trying to get you off balance. He's trying to
Mm-hmm.
get you to a situation where you're uncomfortable. Well, you fight that discomfort with a guy who's just really long in Paul. Jalen's not known for blowing by guys or Jalen is a very technical, like if this was pro
Yes.
wrestling, like he'd be one of those wrestlers that look like they were actually studying what the trainers were telling them to do. That's Jalen Brunson. And like I think the most effective way to attack that is put size on him. Have Russ go on Quentin Grimes. And we're discussing this, and it's like we're probably only going to see those two starting units together for like no more than 10 minutes of the game. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like substitutions matter for both of these teams. The Knicks for years have been significantly more effective depending on who they're bringing off the bench. And they have two of the very best reserves in the league in Quick and in Josh Hart. Like those guys change games. Josh Hart changes the way the Knicks play when he's into the game. And, that guy is a grab and go player. They didn't have that before they acquired him. Emmanuel Quickly is a guy who honestly he's shout out to him because no one would have blinked if he would have fell out of the first round of his draft. That dude's played like a lottery pick, and so like as small guards go, he's one of the most effective, and he should probably play more. But the reason he doesn't play more is because who do you take out the lineup to include a small guard? Your best player is arguably a small guard. Quentin Grimes is a key part of whatever spacing the Knicks are supposed to have. RJ is another guy who needs the ball. So that's a concern with the Knicks. But it's like when we talk about matchups, the Clippers have their options. I think the key one is I said before, Marcus Morris played 2 good games against the Knicks last year. That dude's not on the roster anymore. So who's the guy that is new that's going to figure out what to do with Julius? I'm sure Kawhi might get a chance or two, but I think the most intriguing part is James Harden's role.
And that's what I'm looking for as well. So if that's the case, then you're saying that Brody is going to be on Grimes. That'd be interesting. I'd like to see it. I like to see all that. I like to see all that unfold. And we already know who the centers are guarding. You talked about IQ. You talked about Hart. I mean, I can't go without asking you about the Clippers and then wrapping up here. Like you got Norman Powell and Bones Highland on that team. I like what Bones has been doing so far this season. He's been a spark plug off the bench, and then Norman Powell is just legit shooter. He's been good. Especially he can be there. There are moments where he can go off as well coming off the bench. So it's not like the Clippers don't have some guys who can punch and swing and get you and keep you in this game or even take over a game coming from the bench. And so this is where, like for me, like you talked about IQ, definitely Josh Hart. I'll give respect. I gotta give respect to Isaiah Hartenstein, even though he's more of a cog than he is a guy that you would rely on. We're still waiting on Dante DiVincenzo to show us what he can be all about consistently. But I'm looking at Norman Powell and Bones Highland for the Clippers because both of them just offensively. I like the second unit. We got scrappers, especially with Josh Hart, Dante, and Quick. And I wonder if they're gonna be able to slow down Bones and Powell this in this matchup.
Yeah, the minutes are going to be very interesting. I think what helps both of those guys is Terrence Mann's still not ready to come back, and so they're going to be guys 6 and 8. I think Norm is going to be guy 6. The bigger concern with Norm is how much on the ball can he be. I think James does a lot of the things Norm was supposed to do, but James comes with playmaking, which Norm. Let's just be real here. If Norman Powell was a 5 assist kind of dude, like Norman Powell would probably be starting with that group. I think that a lot of the moves have been made with the consideration that Norm is really good at a lot of things offensively, but passing and playmaking have not been a comfort zone for him. Now he's probably, strictly an off guard, strictly a, guy that you're going to want to have the ball still, but him getting the ball is going to come in the form of dribble handoffs and just being able to get downhill as quickly as possible rather than have him make anything happen. I think that's a big thing. So Bones' minutes are going to be affected by this trade, significantly so. I think Bones is going to wind up being a 10th man instead of the 8th man that he will be for right now. And so the thing with Bones is he's got the Emmanuel Quickly gene, he's a guy that is a young player. Even Norm is 30, I think you do need a young guard who can have some energy in this league. And so with a guy like Bones, who, drafted right around the same time Quick was drafted, just a year later. Quick was the 25th pick of 2020 draft. Bones was 26th of 2021. They're the same archetype player. I think it's really important to keep those guys involved. It's just they're not going to play as much.
Well, appreciate your time for coming on the show and helping me break this game down. One last question. Who wins tomorrow, Clippers or Knicks? And is it championship or bust? Sorry, 2 last questions. Championship or bust for the Clippers, and who wins tomorrow?
I think the Clippers win this game tomorrow. Just feel like 4 days off is a long time, especially when you lose the way they lost to the Lakers. There are several chips on several shoulders. Just putting it out there. Like I think they're going to be very locked in, very prepared. They're not going to lose this or hand this game off. They fumbled that game to the Los Angeles Lakers on national TV. And so I think that they're all going to be motivated to come out and show that they're better than that. And I don't think the Knicks are playing as well. The Knicks got a good amount of time off as well, but the reality is it was only 2 days for the Knicks, versus 4 days for the Clips. The Clips got here early to New York, so they're adjusted to the time change. They're adjusted to, the time zone change. They got practices in at home and today in New York at Nike. So I just feel like the Clippers are going to be coming out ready to make a statement. As far as the championship part, everyone understands that that's what these guys aren't just here so that they could put new pictures on the wall in the arena. Okay. Like, they're here to win the championship. The contracts say that that is what they're here to do. There is no next year for this team. So you're going to not hear these guys talk about that. No one needs to keep saying championship or bust. I think these guys need to focus on enjoying this season, enjoying each other's company, enjoying the opportunity to play basketball, something that all those dudes in one form or another have had taken away from them. Some of them at various points of their career. Kawhi missed a year due to the ACL. He came back different. Paul George, he broke his leg in Indiana, and people still don't talk about that. They have found new and different ways to categorize what Paul George is in terms of the basketball conversation. Russell Westbrook literally was exiled by the Lakers, and people were saying that he should retire and he'll never be an impact player again. And James, he didn't debut. He's going to debut tomorrow. He's going to get to play an NBA game for the first time since May. Everyone else in the league who's been healthy has played already. And so, James has had time to sit and watch and figure out when this was ever going to happen. It's happened. There's no excuses, and we're going to see how that plays out tomorrow and over the course of the season.
All right. And just because I'm a Knicks fan and this is KnicksFanTV, I'm going to choose the Knicks to win. Well, I'm going to choose the Knicks to win because that's how I run on the show. But thank you all for joining me today and joining Knicks Nation to help us break down this game. Please let the listeners know where they can find you, and if you got any upcoming material that we should be on the lookout for.
Yeah, I mean, shout out to the Athletics. We got a great team over there, and I will say I am looking forward to the lineup changes and breaking those down over the course of the first couple weeks of the season. I was going to do that last week, but you might have heard about a trade that went down that might have blown that up a little bit. So with that trade done, I don't think we're getting another big trade anytime during this in-season tournament period that we're in. I'm looking forward to, helping people separate this season from what you might have saw last season. That is something that I'm going to be working on this week. So keep your eyes peeled for that.
Awesome. So make sure to go subscribe to The Athletic. Make sure to go follow Wall and check out his great work over there. And once again, thank you to Wall Murray, Clippers beat reporter for The Athletic, for joining us today. And Knicks Nation, you all know what to do. Make sure to hit that thumbs up button for your boys. Make sure to share these videos. And if you can't tune in live to catch the show, you can always find us on any audio listening platform, Apple, Spotify, you name it. You can catch the shows over there. Also, make sure to go check out KnicksFanTV.com. Make sure to go support the writers over there. Make sure to support our sponsor for this show, Underdog Fantasy. They will give you a match of up to $500 if you use the promo code KFTV. And make sure to go to, let me pull up get the website right. Make sure to go to HallOfFameSignings.com to go get Jalen Brunson's autograph over at the Palisades Mall in Rockland County. So you can go do that. Once again, thank you, Knicks Nation, for tuning in. We'll catch you later tonight for Knicks Weekly.